So you want to gather up your ingredients. Don't chintz yourself. Get a good sized pan to cook these in because you want them to be a little bit spread apart. And I have a little bit of avocado oil or coconut oil, just a little bit to get it started. You don't need much. Now I have 2 pounds of ground meat, and I actually have 1 pound of turkey, 1 pound of beef. You can mix it up, and it gives your meatballs a little dimension. They're going to be different, never the same, right? Last time I made this recipe, I used 2 pounds of chicken, ground chicken, and they were delicious that way. I've done them with bison, all beef, all turkey. I'm not a big fan. The turkey doesn't have a lot of flavor, so mixing turkey and beef, you've got lean, you've got flavor. It should be really good. But whatever you like, okay? It's a very flexible recipe. Now, I've added to this 1/3 of a cup of almond flour, 1/3 of a cup. If you don't have any, you can use oat flour. If you don't have oat flour, you can take 1/3 of a cup of oats and run them through a processor real quick. You can even leave them whole, but then you kind of have little pieces. Flour is nicer. I have already added in here, as you can see, my ingredients, and that was 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of onion powder. I have not added pepper yet, so 1 to 2 teaspoons of pepper. This is very flexible. If you like it peppery, go for it, okay? And we need 2 teaspoons of oregano, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball that as well, and I love you can crush it in your hands. It kind of brings out the flavor. So these are all the spices and the dry herbs, okay? I added salt already, 1 teaspoon. The fresh herbs, we're going to add later. So you want the spices and dried herbs to cook for a while. The fresh herbs are going to be later, and we'll taste that freshness. I happen to have parsley, some tarragon, and some basil, all from the garden. Whatever you have is great, okay? Again, this is a really flexible recipe. Okay. All right, so I have all that in there. I need an egg, so let me get that. And I didn't want to leave it sitting out, so there we go. So 1 egg is all we need. All right, now, there's only one way to make meatballs, and that's get your hands dirty. Cooked one, not cooked at all. So first, we just want to, I'll do this on the cutting board so you can really see what I'm doing. Divide it into 2 halves. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think you get the idea. Even halves. And then divide the halves in half. Okay, so now we have 4. That would be too big of a meatball. And then you can kind of like make sure it's even. And divide those in half, which is going to give us 8. Right? 8. And now each of these get divided in half again. So just boom, like this. You don't have to be too picky. It's not perfect, but this gives you about as even as you will need. And then I just kind of, these aren't the meatballs yet, but they're kind of starting to be, right? But this will give you even ones because you don't, like I said, want to like dry out some, and even for serving, it's going to look nicer if they're all about the same size, more or less. So that's my trick for making that happen. And you see, I'm just sort of stealing from one and giving to another to sort of even these out a bit. Like that one looks really small. Okay, there, and there. Okay, there we go. So those are the portions. Let me get this bowl out of the way. Now, I'm just wiping my hands clean, and I need a little bit of oil on my fingers to make the meatballs. And that'll keep it from constantly sticking to my hands. And it applies a little oil to the outside of the meatballs so that when we go to cook it, it'll be super easy. Super easy. Here we go. And, you know, if you have a crowd coming, this is an easy recipe, and you can double this recipe. Or if you know you have some busy times ahead, you could always double this and freeze. This freezes well and easily reheats. In fact, Italian food usually tastes better the second day because all those flavors just meld together while they're in the refrigerator or in the freezer. All right, we're almost there. One more. Okay. Are these perfectly even? No. This one's a little big, and that one's a little small. So we can even them out, but don't worry about it. It's not a rocket science here. We just want it to be pretty close, and there you have it. Now I need to get this pan warming up before I start. Don't put them in a cold pan because they tend to stick when you do. Let it warm up. I'm going to kind of go on a medium heat. We're not in a hurry here, so it should go over a medium heat for your best results. Okay. And we're done with all this. You can see that I only have a little bit of oil in the pan. Doesn't take much. Once the meat starts cooking, the fat kind of seeps out, and you know it'll really take care of itself. All right, just about. You can tell it's ready when the oil kind of shimmers a little bit, and I can feel the heat coming off the pan. So let's go for it. I always start around the outside, because the pan is going to be the hottest in the middle, so I'll add to that last. Now here's the other way I know the pan was ready, because immediately I can hear a little bit of a sizzle. Okay, here we go. Notice that I am not crowding the pan, because we're going to do this in 2 batches. This is fine. Sure, I could get these guys in there, but I don't want to, because it's really hard to turn them, so we're just going to do it like that. In fact, to really make it easier, let's just keep them all on the outside. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, now I have a plate nearby because when these are done, I'm going to cook these, and I want just a plate to put them on so I can have that ready to go. These won't take long to cook. And remember, we're not going to have to cook them all the way through because they are going to simmer in our sauce. In fact, while that's happening, I can get this can open, or you can prepare your tomatoes. Hey, if you have a garden and you have fresh tomatoes, what a wonderful dish this would make with that. And you can just chop them up and cook them slowly and let them reduce down to a nice sauce. How delicious would that be? I don't have a garden full of tomatoes, so next best thing would be a good quality sauce. All right. So I'm going to start right where I was, because that one was cooking the longest, and work my way around. Now, the reason why I left the middle blank is so I could come at it, all right? And I'm just going to turn these over. And they're just starting to cook on the outside. I have to come at it from an angle. I think my pan is off center because that cooks more. All right. The trick here is not to be impatient. Let them cook. If you start moving them around before you get this caramelization, they could stick to the pan, which we'd rather not do. So you're just going to let them cook nice and gently, okay? While they're cooking, I'm going to talk about the zucchini noodles that I'm making. Now keep in mind, you can have these meatballs and sauce just over a bed of spinach or asparagus. It's wonderful. I'm going to make zucchini noodles. You can use pasta of any kind, right? So you have a lot of options. But I'm going to make noodles, and I'm going to use some summer squash and zucchini for them. And let me just talk about how that's done. I can make these noodles and cook them, and if you've ever done it and it comes out really mushy, I'm going to show you how to avoid that. Got a little step in between there, but it's really worth it. All right, let's come back around and just kind of turn these to another side. And I'm going to turn the pan down a little bit. As soon as it starts to sputter, it's a bit much. And try not to squish them so that they do stay round for you. That's why they call it a meatball. You don't want a meat pancake here. We're not making hamburgers. Not today, anyway. All right. Give that a little more time. Okay. So while that's working, I'm just going to take the ends off my squash. Now, when it comes to making zucchini noodles, you need more zucchini than you think because it kind of cooks down. So just letting you know, this looks like a lot, but it really isn't. Something for the compost. So once this pan gets going, these don't take as long. One more side to do. They're just about ready to take off onto the plate, and we'll finish up with these remaining meatballs. Okay. All right. So off they go. Notice I'm still working clockwise, so that way every single one gets about the same amount of time cooking. The pan is good and hot now. All right, there they are. And let's get these guys in. There we go. All right. My cutting board's a mess. I'm going to put it over by the sink and get another. Now, I usually just divide up the meat in the bowl into these 16 portions, so I don't mess up the cutting board quite so much as I did today. But I wanted to be able to show you exactly what was going on. So while these are cooking, I can start the zoodles. Love this little gadget. I've got a big fancy thing with a crank, but honestly, this is easy. It cleans up quick, and it makes two types, and I want the skinny zoodles. And you just sort of twist and turn through here and see what it makes. These nice noodles. Okay? So we're just going to kind of work on this while the meatballs are growing, but don't lose track too much, because now that the pan is good and hot, it's not going to take too long. In fact, I think it's time to start turning. Yes, it is. And I'm going to turn the pan down again a little bit. A good cooking pan, once you get it going, you can turn it way down because it holds the heat. We're not trying to burn or char these. Leave that for the steak. Well, not burn it, char it. Okay, see how nice these come out? Now, if you don't have one of these, hey, order one from Amazon. I think they're like $12 or maybe less. But you can also use a vegetable peeler and make noodles. It's a little bit more tedious, but you can do that. Now, as you get down to the end, you don't want to cut yourself. So I always just keep the end part, and I'll chop this up and put it in an omelet or something rather than cut myself. It's not worth it, right? I've had enough of those little kitchen accidents, and then you don't want to invite trouble. As you can see, this looks like a lot, but I promise you it won't be when we're done. All right. Back to the meatballs. If you're uncomfortable doing two things at a time, don't worry, because you can fix these meatballs, and once you have the sauce in, we're really going to have the lid on, and it just simmers very low, and then you can tackle the zoodles if you're making them, if you don't want to worry about that. But honestly, you have a few moments here, so might as well make good use of our time and keep these zoodles going at a good pace. It doesn't take long to do this. Like I said, I've got this other gadget that you take out, and it's got like a crank and everything, And I guess, you know, for making a lot of it, it's a little easier on the arm, but honestly, I don't mind doing this. And doing it along with the meatballs, you kind of get a little bit of a break. Okay, look how nice. Okay, back to the meatballs. Give them another turn. And again, just squeeze it if you need to kind of keep them round. This is what we're looking for. Turn down the heat as needed. These look exactly like what I was looking for. Okay. And I have a yellow squash here. You don't have to mix, but why not? You could do all yellow, all green. I just kind of grabbed what I had. Now, when you buy these already formed into zoodles in the store, you can cook them that way. Because they were packaged, they dry out. But what we're going to do is salt these to get rid of the excess moisture. Because if I were to put these in the pan and cook them with olive oil and garlic like we will eventually, it will be real mushy. Because summer squash has a lot of water content. So that's why we're going to salt it. We're going to let them sit for 20, 30 minutes. We'll rinse thoroughly and then wring them out, you know, with paper towels to get rid of all the moisture. Then we can cook them. And I'm not going to fix this till later, but I'll have it all ready to go. Everything into the pan. So there we have it. Now when I say salt it, I mean, let's get generous here. Plenty of salt. Remember, we're going to rinse this. And I have the colander over a bowl. Okay? And you're going to see in a moment or two how much really liquid comes out of that. So the meatballs, meanwhile, back at the meatballs. Okay. Delicious. All right. So now, let's bring the whole crew together. Now we can turn this down to low and get all the meatballs in here. Okay. Okay. How we doing? Good? All right. We don't need this plate anymore. All right. So now comes the tomato. Very simple. Just going to pour that in. And again, if you have spaghetti sauce that you like, just a basic one. I love these crushed tomatoes. Super sweet. They don't need much added. And I'm going to add a teensy bit of water to this can so that we can get it all out. Just a little bit. I hesitate wasting. And this is going to cook down anyway. All right. We are just about ready to let this kind of do its thing. Now I'm going to cover this to keep all the heat and moisture in. And I'm just going to watch it because we want it to start bubbling and then turn it back ever so slightly so that we can get a nice simmer. And you want it at least 20, 30 minutes, okay? And then at the end, we're going to add these beautiful herbs and give that a stir for another 5 minutes or so. So let's get these ready. So tarragon, you just run your fingers down and pull it off the stem like this. Very simple. Okay, and tarragon chops up really easily. Okay. Parsley, I'm not worried about a few stems. They have flavor too, but I just get rid of the stronger stems at the bottom. And again, we want to chop this up fine. Now, I'm going to serve this with some fresh herbs at the end as well, okay, because I like it that way. Maybe it's an alarm. Oh, there. Now, the basil, the best way to cut it is to make like a little cigar and just run a knife through it very gently. And you get these nice little ribbons called a chiffonade. Notice that my sauce is on a roll here. See that? So now we can turn it down. And we don't want to kill it. We don't want it to stick or burn. So I'm going to turn it down just slightly. You just want to make sure that it's still always simmering just like that, but not going crazy. Every now and then you can come in and give this a stir, but it really is on self-propel at this point. I'm going to leave my herbs sitting aside, ready for when I need them. Okay. All right, so I've got some nice things for an omelet. Every now and then you can kind of give this a little stir. Now, in about 10 minutes, you're going to see an enormous puddle of water at the bottom because this is going to drain it out. And all we're going to do is rinse it well, and again, rinse it, be sure to, because it will be too salty, but you'll rinse all the salt out, and then you're going to dry it really well. First, use this strainer to get as much moisture out as you can, then press some paper towels in it or a dish towel. See, I can already see some of the liquid coming out of here. Yeah. See? I don't know if you can tell. It's already doing that. But if you don't take the time to do this step, what you end up with is this watery dish, you know, and then you go to put your sauce on there or your food on the plate, and you're wondering why is it so watery, which isn't appealing at all. So that's what I recommend for these, because I went through several trial and error. Look at all this liquid that comes out of here. Look at that. Could make a pot of soup out of it. And we're not even anywhere near the 20 minutes that it needs. Grab this. There. That's better. So, anyway, that's all there is to this. So, again, I'm going to have the meatballs with the zoodles tonight, but maybe on another occasion I'll cook up some pasta. Again, it's delicious over anything. But I love these meatballs because they're so easy to make and they reheat. So I hope you'll try this recipe. By the way, I've made these using ButcherBox turkey and their grass-fed ground beef. And if you haven't ordered with ButcherBox yet, they have an amazing special right now where you get 7 pounds of free essentials. It's ground beef, chicken, and pork chops with your deal as a first-time customer. So I'll put the link on here. It's a great deal. Just thought I would tell you about it. As you know, I'm a ButcherBox partner and I love their products, so I hope you'll try them as well. I hope you'll try this recipe. I will post the end results later this evening and you'll see that, and the full recipe is available on Sundaymealprep.com. So have a great rest of your Sunday. I'm glad you've come to cook with me today, and have a great one.